Hi, I'm Noah, and today I'm going to be talking about lessons that I've learned from the book Limitless. This book literally changed my brain. It taught me how to learn, read, and memorize, and I hope that this book review will help you do the same. So, first lesson is the power of beliefs. Beliefs are powerful. For example, sucked at juggling for a long time, but I said to myself, I'm not good yet. And now I'm better than I ever was before. So, you didn't see that. Your beliefs, in other words, are a computer program that, when executed, is executed via your body language, your demeanor. So, say you think that you're not good enough. You think you're dumb. Your body language is going to reflect that. You're going to have poor posture. You're going to be slumped forward. Oh. And then whenever you make a mistake on a, say, a project you do, you're going to say to yourself, oh, I made a mistake because I'm dumb. And then through reinforcement, the cycle repeats itself. These thought processes are prominent concerning automatic negative thoughts. In other words, ANTS, the acronym. So basically what I would say is you would want to discard that negative thought and replace it with a more factual, positive thought. So you might be asking, how do I do that? How do I discard my negative belief and take in a positive one that I will use to fuel my betterment? Well, so here's what you do in order. You give your negative voice or thoughts a negative name, like booger, for example. Ugh, I don't like booger. You separate the voice or thought from yourself. You give it the name booger. Then you talk back at it, admitting that this is completely separate from you. Then you really evaluate your situation, why you made a mistake or whatever your situation is, and say, okay, what's the real reason, the positive, constructive reason I made this mistake? Oh, I was careless on a reading assignment. Okay, I know I'm typically better at doing this than what I just did. This was just a fluke, an off circumstance. Okay, that's constructive. So you then, once you've done that, you use that to construct your new belief in place of the previous negative belief, like, oh, I'm dumb. No. Instead, you use that to say, construct the belief, oh, I'm very persistent, careful, and deliberate with how I work. And I will do better. See the difference? I'm dumb, I will do better. Next lesson, how to read effectively. So what Jim Quick espouses in the book Limitless is the acronym FASTER. So in it you got forget, which is forget your limitations, what's not urgent or important. And so that's pretty important when it comes to reading, because your mind, your focus, your attention, if it's divided, you got something on your mind, then all of a sudden you're obviously not going to be reading as effectively. And you might be saying, okay, well, Noah, how do I get stuff out of my mind? It's easier said than done, right? In a way, but what I do is I have a distraction journal. And so if I'm about to read, or if I'm about to do anything that entails work, having a job, school, etc., I would write down what pops in my head on that journal. And when I do that, my mind tells me, okay, it's out of my head onto something that I know I'm going to come back to later, which is key. And thus I will relieve my mental resources of that thought. And so now I have more storage or attention to participate on this task at hand. So the A part in faster is active. You want to make your learning active. If you're just a passive learner, you're not going to be learning as much. And so, for example, in reading, how you might do that is after you read, you kind of write down what you learned, and so that helps to consolidate short-term to long-term memory. Also, spaced repetition, going back to it over time and starting from shorter but going to longer intervals will help consolidate as well. And so those are just a few examples in the A part and faster. As for the S, it stands for state. All learning is state dependent. If, say you're sitting in a classroom, you're looking at the lecturer speak and you're just like this. Well, if you're bored, you're just not going to learn as much. Another way to improve your reading is to use the Pomodoro technique, whereby you study, read, learn for 25 minutes at a time, followed by a 5-minute break. That is one Pomodoro. And so after every 4 Pomodoros, you then take a longer 15 to 30 minute break. And what this does is this makes use of a mechanism by which humans as a species tend to remember. We remember according to primacy and recency. And so when you have this like 25 to 30 minute spurt of working on your activity, which is reading, and then you follow that with another one, you keep creating multiple beginnings and ends to your activity, which are the parts of the activity that you will most remember when you read. And so when you create multiple beginnings and ends, you're creating multiple points at which to remember. And so that's why Pomodoro technique is so effective. Additionally, I would ask questions before you start your spurt of reading. This is because if you have no questions, it's expected you're going to get no answers, as Jim says in his book. And so if you ask questions, for example, how would I do this? Why must I do this? When must I do this? If you ask these questions concerning the subject as you are reading, you're going to be looking for answers to those questions as you're reading, and all of a sudden you're exploring for information. You're not mindlessly roaming through the material. And so you naturally create an area of greater intent. And I noticed that this at least helped me greatly. And so I would expect this one particular trip to help you. Next lesson is how to be productive. What you want to do is basically eat good food, quality organic food. And this is because, well, if you don't put the right stuff in your body, if you put junk in your body, what's going to come out is junk. You're going to have junk for productivity. And so if you do that, you're just not going to feel as good. On the flip side, if you put good food in your body, right after you eat it, you feel energized. You're ready to get back to work. I remember having pizza and pasta from some Italian restaurant. I mean, the world is full of temptation. And but after I ate that, I was just out of energy and I kind of felt tired. But every time, never fails. When I eat good, solid, healthy food, I am always ready to reach the next milestone in my work. You also want brain nutrients, aka supplements. So if you, back then, like many thousands of years ago, when we were, being hunted by animals, we had to survive out as like tribes and all that. We actually lived in an animalistic state, and so because of that, we wouldn't be lacking the necessary nutrients that our bodies need. And so if we live like that, I would say we don't need supplements. But in our modern world, we don't do that. So therefore, even when we eat the quality, organic, pasture raised, whatever ingredients, by the time the plant gets harvested and comes to us, I mean, so much time has passed that some of the nutrients that were in the plant when it was raised some of those nutrients are not there when they come to us. And so what fills that gap in our nutrient deficiency? Supplements. I would also recommend exercise. For example, I run every day in the morning for 15 minutes. And when I come back about every other day, I will do a 30-minute strength training session. And I would say that is about how much you need. Jim in the book says you need about 2.5 hours of exercise. I mean, if you do any of those, your body's gonna be fine, but what you don't want to be doing is living a sedentary lifestyle. When our species was made, we were moving a lot, and so in this modern time, when you have people sitting for hours on end, that's not exactly natural, and hence it's not healthy. Our bodies were not meant for that. And so I'd say like every hour or every hour and a half, and this is on top of the exercise, I would say just get up and move around. I mean, for example, when I am on break, I will get up and I will juggle and I will drink water, which is also important. Additionally, you want to kill ants, get your 8 hours of sleep. You don't want to be neglecting your sleep. It's just associated with too many health problems to be even considering. You might have those like 1 or 2 days in which you're sleep deprived, but I mean, you can't not live off that long term. Next is stress management. So what I try to do partly is obviously the Pomodoro technique, to put in some breaks in between so that way you come out refreshed. But to really prevent stress directly, I'd say probably meditation. There's loads of research out there that proves that meditation is very healthy spiritually for you, and it will I mean, for me, I meditate once every day, and every time I do it, I always relish it, because every time I do it, I come out fresher. I'm just a more refined version of myself, and so that's just for me, an invaluable tool that I integrate into my daily routine. Next up is new learnings. So I would say reading every day is a must. Most of the successful people out there, they vast majority of them read. And you might say, oh, well, reading's boring. I like watching TV, movies, figure skate, etc., etc. I see. Okay, at least to learn but not make it boring, I will say at least try to gamify it. Like, while you're reading, put on some, like, what does my generation listen to these days? Hip hop. Put on that. Now, I was just Baroque music, but probably not for my generation, aside from me. Or if you don't like reading and you just want to avoid it altogether, probably podcasts are the answer for you. They're visual and auditory, and so what you get with that is you're doing something you find more entertaining, but it's also knowledge worthy, and so that might help you there. Next is brain protection. So yeah, obviously you want to protect your brain. If you're doing like a physical activity going out on a bike, you would probably want to put like some helmet on to make sure that your brain's protected. Another thing to know is basically clean environment. If you're in a way, your environment is like a reflection of yourself. If your environment is sticky, dirty, not comfy, cozy to be in, it's going to be reflected in your internal environment. You're just not going to be as productive. And last one of Jim's quick brain tips for productivity is basically having a positive peer group. If you want to have lasting productivity, I would say positive peer group is probably one of the most important things you could do for you. It kind of comes down to this. He said it in his book that going by yourself to the finish line is faster, but you will get farther if you have a positive peer group, a supporting cast to back you up. No one deserves to go about their journey alone. Now, before I wrap up this lesson, I want to address something that you may be thinking about. When reading the book Limitless, I was perplexed by Pomodoro and the flow state. Basically, they're kind of antithetical to each other. I mean, one of them you get longer breaks, but for those who want to get into like a creative space, it seems like, well, it kind of kills your flow, which is kind of what the flow state is like. But Jim didn't, at least from my impression from reading the book 2 times, address when to use one or the other. And so I thought I'd give my input. From 2 articles I read online, I came to the conclusion that you would want to use the Pomodoro technique for when you do mundane, boring, or like non-creative tasks like calendar scheduling, checking emails, that type of thing. On the other hand, you got the flow state, which is, I'll explain it to you. It's basically when you set aside an hour and 30 minutes or to 2 hours of time with no distractions, and you approach your work. This type of work is called deep work. Pomodoro work is shallow work. That's when you want to engage in Pomodoro. And so for deep work, for flow state, that actually concerns creative tasks like coding and basically being like a visionary, like trying to say be a architect coming up with new ideas, brainstorming, writing for a book. And so that's kind of when you would choose one or the other. So that kind of begs the question, okay, how would I use these two? Well, what you would do to apply this is basically ask yourself, okay, what is this task? Is this a shallow work task or is this a deep work task? Now, mind you, the deep work task with flow only applies if you actually enjoy the work. So if it's not deep work, or you don't like the work, which is going to prevent you from getting into a flow state in the first place, then I would say use Pomodoro on that. If you deem otherwise for this task prior, say when you're scheduling on the calendar, then you would use the flow state technique. And so that's how I would use those two things. And so I hope that cleared up the confusion. Last but not least is the lesson of how to form habits. And so one thing that Jim says regarding this is you want to make the good things easy and the bad things hard. So how would you do that? I'll give an example. Say you're trying to study for an exam. Well, if I just go at it brute force thinking, oh, okay, I gotta study for an exam, I'm gonna be like, well, this is boring, this is terrible, I don't wanna do this. But what if you form a study group, all of a sudden, you got these guys who are, if they're good students, they'll keep you accountable, and by being able to converse with them, the experience is gonna be funner than if you just study by yourself. That's making the good things easy. As for the bad things hard, an example would be, say you're trying to not eat junk food. Again, for accountability, get together with some guy, you say to him, hey, I want to sign a contract with you. If I don't stop eating junk food for 1 week, then I will agree by this contract that I'm writing to you right now that I will pay you $100. If I were to do that, I would not want to eat junk food, and hence that would make the bad thing, aka eating junk food, hard. So if you want to take anything away from this book, I would say it should be that you should read every day. Yes, I'm saying it again, you should read every day. And Jim kind of, to help you get through with this, he kind of says that you should just get started. And I agree with that. And the way I think about it is like kind of a Newton's law of physics, whereby it's harder to get something moving than to keep something moving. And so why make it harder to start by giving yourself this monumental task that's intimidating? So if you just say, just get started, then it's like, oh, okay, very low pressure, low stakes. It makes it as easy as possible to get started, to get moving. And then when you do that, you're going to be kind of building this momentum to keep going. And so one insightful thing I would want to leave with you is how to read 52 books in a year. Whoa, 52 books in a year. Okay, that's intense. Well, it's a matter of perspective. Let me show you. So let's say you're trying to read 52 books in a year. Okay, that's 52 books in 52 weeks. You break that down. You got one book per week. So now it doesn't look quite as intimidating. Let's do that again. You break that down further. For the average person that's slow reader, let's say you're slowest of the slow, you're 200 to 300 words per minute. That's how fast you read. Let's say you read that slow. The average book, it would take you 315 or so minutes to read for the average book. So that's 315 minutes per week that you have to get through in order to get through one book. Okay, let's divide that into 45 minutes per day. If you do that per day, you'll get through that 315 minutes per week, and you'll get that book done. So you divide that into 45 minutes a day. Well, okay, how do I have time to do 45 minutes in a day? Do it per meal. Divide it per meal. 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon, 15 minutes in the evening. Huh. So you're saying, Noah, if I just read 15 minutes per every meal I eat, assuming I eat 3 meals per day, every day for a year, then I should be able to get through, on average, 52 books in a year? Yes. Yes, you can. And that's the power of small, simple steps. Or if you want to add on top of that, my way of looking at it as a matter of perspective. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.